Well, as you know, we like to start off each of our episodes with a little bit of a recap, where we like to break down what happened in the episode of Critical Role. And then if you're watching just the recap, we put our full thoughts and theories and discussion in its own video that you can check out the link to that down below as well. But this was Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 99, Downfall Part 1. It's a mouthy title, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it just Part 1, by the way, or with Calamity we had actual names for each?
Yeah, I think it's just called Downfall Part 1.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I'll look, but yeah.
So we try to keep our recaps pretty brief. My notes are 4 pages. So I'm gonna do my best. All right, guys. The episode opens up with this whimsical space of eternity and timelessness, stars and light and all this stuff. And Brennan says this is Tengar, the eternal palace, the ramparts of spinning stars. In the distant part of Tengar is the Quill of Infinites, which is endlessly writing worlds. And then there is also a parade of twinkling lights that is moving towards what's known as the Orchard of Possibility. Now, there is a really cool effect that happens here where they sort of mask the names of the characters to sort of create like this infinite, like you can't even comprehend the name kind of implication of it. But for the sake of our sanity, we know the names from the captions. And so I'll just go ahead and refer to people as their names rather than random noises. This parade of twinkling lights, by the way, is Idun. And Idun quickly spots Aru, who is Nick's character, and says, "Hey, I want to show you something. Do you have any friends nearby?" Ashley Johnson's character, Luz, is called out to by Aru and is accompanied by, I thought it was her sister, but I think after the fact I realized it was her brother, Emery, who is like this fire, this spirit, maybe is a good way to put it, but like this creation of like fire, essentially, that is excited to also see what Idun wants to show. Also present is Nahal, who is Laura Bailey's character and is described by like these sort of chaotic purple fractals. And Idun basically brings them to this tree, this new tree that's being born in the Orchard of Possibility. It seems to be like a rare occasion. This tree is like twitching and is something's odd about it. It has a fruit hanging from one of its branches, also a gem, and Brennan says even a sun that is collapsing into itself. Aru, Nick's character, immediately says, "Oh my gosh, it's beautiful." Emery doesn't agree. Emery is put off by it. Idun, without even waiting, is excited to show them more about the tree, reaches out to pluck one of the fruits, freezes and says, "I'm sorry, I think I'm going away," and then just disappears. And in this moment, left is this like void. This is the Palace of Lights. There is like this void of lightlessness in his space. Also in the orchard nearby is Talison's character, Ash, who's sort of like excited about what is happening now. Like, oh, I've been waiting for something new. Like, this is kind of interesting. And then also there's another NPC named Alice who's nearby who also like touches the lightlessness, this void, and then says, "I'll miss you," and then is also just poofed, is just gone. And as Alice disappears, a distant tower crumbles and this kingdom of Tengar begins to just like dissipate and erupt into chaos. Everything begins to fall apart. Brennan points to a nearby hallway in the palace where we see Noshir's character Idam and also Abu's character Koru, who are in the hallway as it begins to collapse. And they're both like, "This is pretty cool. Like, how exciting." But then Ihana, an NPC, sorry, I know this is a lot of names, by the way. Ihana, who's another NPC, who's known as the Weaver of Time, pulls Koru from the hallway, basically saving Koru's life, and basically says, like, we have to run. Like, nothing is not good. We have to run. Ihana summons like this seed that sprouts into a ship, everyone gathers on. Another NPC by the name of Shasti begins like creating like this barrier of like sort of like taking the destruction of the city of the palace and like using it to block like this wave of chaos. The ship takes off as Tengar basically dissipates into nothingness. On the ship, they are surrounded by like basically a storm cloud of like fire and light and energy, and they realize that this is going to consume them and destroy them. Imri looks to Luz and says, "I love you," and kind of gives like this implication of a last stand, runs to the bow of the ship and begins to like hold out their hands to like protect the ship, is immediately burned by this wave of fire. And Luce runs over, hugs him, and basically tries to heal him to keep him alive, which she does. But this fire sort of like permanently scars. He was a figure of like flame, permanently scars as like his face becomes real, and his mane of fire instead becomes like burned away and twisted into like two blackened horns. Basically, for brevity, everyone's basically trying to keep the ship going, and there's a moment of Idam who sort of like manifests like a sense of direction, like a helm spot. We have Koru who sort of like manifests like constellations to like give them guidance. And long story short, the scene ends as two things happen. Nahal kind of looks back, and Britton says to Nahal, Laura's character, the thing that has come, the chaos that has come to Tengar, you know in your heart you will encounter it again one day. And then secondly, they arrive in a new world surrounded by monstrous figures, and this is presumably the arrival of the gods to Exandria. We move away from this scene now to many years later in the small town of Hawkshill on the continent of Gwasar, which is modern day Taldore. And we are 100 years into the calamity. The sky is still choked by ash and ruin, as Brennan describes it. We could get a couple of details about this of the Age of Arcanum. Like, people have kind of forgotten about it. It's been decades even since the last god was even seen. But we know that their armies have essentially ravaged the world. Dragons and fays and all sorts of creatures under their armies have just basically ruined the world. And this town of Hawkshill is one of the last remaining cities. Cities is too kind a word, hovels even, that people have gathered waiting for salvation from Aor, the last of the great sky cities. There's a landing pad and sort of this implication that occasionally a ship from Aor will come and gather supplies, and people wait. And this is sort of like this small little ramshackle town as people wait for their turn to eventually get on this ship and make it to Aor and leave this miserable place. It's now that we're introduced to the cast's actual characters, and we get a description of each character, and we essentially know that each character is basically playing one of the prime deities in human form. First, we meet Ashley Johnson's character. This is Trist, a woman in her late 30s. She's a paladin cleric. She's accompanied by her two young kids, which in the live chat, we were like, I'm ready to be hurt again. Kids and calamity. Her two young kids, daughter Haley and son Topher, and her husband, a Furbolg man, Amaris, who's with her as well. We have Nick's character, a 15-year-old human named Aiden, and his class is, yes, all of them. But in all seriousness, he's a barb, cleric, druid, paladin multi-class. And I should also mention, by the way, who we think the deities are that they're playing. Trist is presumably the Everlight, I think, and if you can correct me, Will, if I get any of these wrong. Presumably the Everlight. Nick's character, Aiden, is presumably the Dawnfather. People are also here selling emblems of rescue. These emblems, basically, if you get passed up to go on the ship, you're given an emblem in return. And every time the ship comes back, the person with the most emblems gets to go on the ship. We have sort of like Trist saying goodbye to her family, and they're like, you sure we can't come with you? And she's like, no, it's better this way. It's It's very sad, by the way. You should just watch it. We meet Laura's character, who is presumably the matron of ravens. It's a human woman, 29, named Amira. She's a warlock. She has a raven who lands on her shoulder, and also Pervon Sul, her champion, who accompanies her, who looks old, looks tired, and they have a very sweet, tearful goodbye, where Pervon basically says, like, it's been the greatest honor of my life to serve you. And also a little tiny lore drop of, the night I met your parents, I had a vision that I should protect you and watch you grow up. And I have been able to do that. And basically says, like, whatever you're still looking for, I hope you find it. We meet Talison's character, Asha, who's a 38-year-old elf monk who basically looks like a farmer, like a very granola kind of person, old clothes, is accompanied by her own retinue, a sort of icy looking man with white skin, a woman who's 6'8", who has like burns across her face. And then there was a third person too that I can't remember the description. All this to say, the ship finally arrives. This is the Venatoria that arrives, and out walks this herald, an Aormaton. This is Abu's character, Salaha, a 30-year-old Aormaton sorcerer warlock who is accompanied by these mage knights known as the Torian Guard, and one Captain Marcus, who's presumably the leader of the Torian Guard. And this Aormaton basically comes out. Salaha basically gives the instructions of, we're here to gather food from you all, and then some of you will be allowed to come on the ship to come to the last bastion of hope, Aor. The guards go out to gather all the foods and all the crate. There's gossip around the town. There's unease around the town as there's a remark that like a nearby town has fallen. And there's kind of an implication like this place is not long for this world, if that makes sense. There's many beggars around. Aiden has this cool moment of basically gifting a tent to a family and create food and water within the tent and telling them, don't look inside till after we leave. Triss says goodbye to her family. Asha says goodbye to her family or her retinue and says, like, look around the people. If you find anyone worthy, bring them home to me. And then Amira tells Pervon goodbye and asks Pervon to keep Triss' family safe. Salaha privately meets with everybody and gives them these amulets, and then they begin to gather up onto the Venatoria. One last thing that happens is as they're bringing on people with emblems, there is a small gnomish family who tries to come on as well. Captain Marcus kicks an old woman off of the ramp because she is holding amongst the emblems. She's holding an emblem to the Dawnfather and basically says, there's no place for that here or on Aor. This is what the gods did to this world, and like points to the sky. And basically says, like, drop your emblem to the Dawnfather or don't come on at all. And the old gnomish woman basically says, like, I won't do that. And her family as well. They drop all their emblems and they stay in Hawkshill. But there's this beautiful moment of Aiden kind of giving her a knowing look, which I won't get into details, but just an awesome moment. Aiden, by the way, also helps a couple whose father is passing on. That also happens in this episode. Just a very cool characterization of the Dawnfather. And then there's also this massive crate, this box that's being brought on board that has been accompanied by Asha as well, Talison's character. They get on board. Once the ship takes off, they finally open the crate, and inside they're surprised to see not the sixth deity, but actually an emissary of this deity, actually known as the emissary. This is Noshir's character, the emissary, who is an Earth Genasi, and it's like he's basically described as like this big slabs of almost like rock armor that is encompassed with this like icy form. Asha asks, did she say anything at all? The emissary says, know that she's always with you, and like has like a sprouted seed in its hand. Asha says idiot and is angry and like kind of goes and sulks in the corner. And basically they wait until finally the ship passes through this like ward around the plain of Aor, this area of Aor called the Latimus Precepts. This seems to be like a guard against anything not mortal, but they are mortal and they are able to pass through, though their amulets shine as they do. And as they approach the city, these mage knights come on board, these inspectors come on board to basically make sure everything is as it should be and there are no stowaways. They do, in fact, find a stowaway who's immediately thrown overboard to his death. And then they come down to the hangar. They see the box and they're like, what's in the box? And Salaha's like, it's apples. They try to cast Detect Invisibility and Detect Magic. Salaha carefully counterspells that. And then one of them casts Zone of Truth. Everyone's successful except for the emissary who's in the box and Amira, who rolls a nat 1. And instead of trying to lie, Amira says, your device must be broken, and casts Suggestion. The two of them basically leave to inspect the device to see why this person said this. And it's around this time that Salaha casts Minor Illusion and basically creates an image of one of the gnomes who was rejected running through the ship. And everyone begins chasing after that gnome. This chaos allows them basically to get towards the city of Aor. And as they look out, they see this massive floating city, huge ramparts set for war, and Colossus Aomertons that Brennan describes as being 30 or 40 feet tall. And that's where we go to break. Lots of details. But yeah.
Well done, man. Yeah, round of applause those of you at home watching, because Blake definitely got the heavy lifting on the recap there. So, but great job, man. So lost my place in my recap notes. There we go. So we pick up with the second half with this ship, the Venatora, is that correct?
Venatoria.
Yeah, with this basically arriving and docking on Aor. Specifically in what we're told is the artists ward. And the streets are very busy, mostly with military presence because we are in the midst of, the calamity right now. And Brennan describes, there's lots of like wizard looking people and a lot of them have like subjugated demons in tow. So it just goes to show that like the might of what humans have accomplished with magic. But Salaha says, we should be safe from inspection at this point. We've made it through the main gates. The emissary is still in his crate, by the way, and I forgot what this was, but there's some description of like magic kind of surrounding the crate and it like hovering now, so like nobody has to actually carry it. So he's standing there for now for appearance's sakes, but Salaha is like, okay, we got to head to this place called the Chamber of Seasons, so follow me. And he basically guides them to a tram. And actually, I think Salaha is they them. Do you know?
Oh, I'm actually not sure. That's a great question.
So forgive me if I keep saying
thanks.
he.
We'll figure that out for next episode for sure. That's a great call out.
But Salaha guides them to the tram, and they are headed toward what is known as the Opus Ward. And while on the tram, there is this little moment where, again, there's like a guard on the tram that has, I think, this necklace that basically has subjugated this like small imp demon that's like in it. And this guard is fallen asleep.
Imp in a ball. It was my.
Yeah, that's exactly what it made me think of too. And he has fallen asleep. And so Amira goes invisible and steals this guard's necklace and does this like. She did this like a couple times where she like breathes in like and can like tell when someone's gonna die and realizes that this guard will be dead in less than a day, and so she just pockets the necklace and keeps it for herself. The party then arrive at the Opus Ward, and it's a place kind of central in Aor, like beneath a lot of things, so like not much sunlight gets here. This is a very old part of the city, and perhaps was even one of the original parts of Aor back when it was like terrestrial, like still, if ever it was part of the actual Earth before it became a sky city, just mostly forgotten. So they exit the tram, head to this large stone building in this Opus Ward, and as they arrive, they hear a voice call out to them. Salaha announces their presence and says, there are 6 of us here, but one of us is different than what we expected. So they enter, and inside they see an Aorian archmage in what appears to be this ruined, forgotten temple. And this mage is a beautiful woman whose name is Arcadia. And Amira greets her as sister. And Arcadia says, like, let's not say that here, basically. And at this point, the emissary is allowed out of the box, and Arcadia's like, whoa, why didn't she come? Like, why is this emissary here instead? And Salaha says she didn't have it in her, I suppose. And Arcadia says, you also broke the rules, kind of, Salaha, referring to the Aormaton form. Anyway, Arcadia asks the emissary, what did your master tell you to do? And the emissary says, she told me to share her love with Aor and guide them true. Arcadia is then like, well, are you willing to accept help in this mission? And the emissary says, yes, like if something will help me meet my means, then of course. So Arcadia then transforms the emissary into what I believe to be more of like a mage's elemental type of look, just to make him be more, blending in, because this huge Earth Genasi form sticks out like a sore thumb. He's not too happy about this, but he goes with it. Aiden then asks Arcadia, how long have you been here? And Arcadia says about 30 years since after our last meeting. I came here as soon as this body was old enough to understand things. She says she and Salaha have learned a lot, and that he was able to be shaped here as an automaton in order to bypass the defenses. She says we should keep speaking, but like not everyone's here. So actually, 4 of the others have arrived. The rest of them betrayed us, but 4 of them actually came, and they're waiting in the other room, the Chamber of Seasons. A place that, again, has been long forgotten by Aor because it used to be a place of worship of the gods before we were hated here. She says, I know we have our beef, basically, with those 4. We have our past. They've hurt us. But here, we're the same. Like, no one has to reveal their true identity. We'll all just use our human names and lives here in Exandria. Like, that should be enough. So they proceed into the next chamber where there are 4 figures waiting for them. There is an old priest of the Dawnfather, a barbarian woman, an old turtle, and a halfling. And Arcadia says, our time should be kept short. This truce has been called so that we can, work together and learn things here. And a lot has already been learned. And this all began when Aor became masked from our sight, when Aor used some sort of protections that made it so the gods could not see what they were doing anymore. And because of that, they all feared the worst. What if they, are planning something against us? And basically our worst fears have been confirmed. There is a weapon here that's all but complete, the Factorum Malleus. The Latimus precepts were also meant to keep us from entering the city and buy these people time and the time they have used to build this weapon. So the weapon can't take our place in the same way the Ascension ritual can, but it just like wipes us from existence. It has the potential to kill something infinite. So Arcadia kind of just gives like the preface to everything going on, basically. This old priest of the Dawnfather then chimes in and says, we should introduce ourselves. I am Milo, a priest of the Dawnfather. This barbarian is Tashar, the halfling is Umleta, and the turtle is like Zahar. That's what I'm just going to call him. It was a little bit longer.
That's fine.
So they're like, we should plan what we're going to do here. And, maybe we should split up, see what we can find, see what we can learn, and maybe like meet back in a week. And Arcadia's like, well, we might not have that much time. Or wait, excuse me. That's the plan. And Arcadia says, yes, there's also something you guys should know about, though, this thing called the Aerovox protocol, which is this failsafe where if anything's fishy, if Aor gets attacked or anything weird happens, they basically shoot off the blueprints for how to build this god-killing machine to all corners of the planet. So we have to be careful about that. And Milo says, yeah, and actually we don't have a week. We might just have one night because one of y'all's servants came here and warned Aor about us. He lets them know that he saw a celestial speaking with the magistrate of the city. And they're like, whoa, like one of ours wouldn't do that. Why would they do that? And Milo says, decades are a long time to leave an empty throne, meaning that, maybe there's some unrest amongst some of their followers. Tashar then says, well, you know what? There's an easy way to deal with all of this. Like, we destroy the weapon, we destroy the blueprints. Let's just take down the whole city. And Trist immediately is like, no. And Aiden's with her. There's like, there must be a different way. Like, if we do it that way, we're just proving them right. Like, let's see what we can learn. And maybe there's another way to handle this. It's at this point that Arcadia decides to cast like a little zone of silence, and kind of the two groups kind of confer amongst themselves a little bit so that the betrayer gods can't hear them. And she basically just gives them more information saying that, this Aerovox protocol is the failsafe. That's what will send the information out. There's this thing called the obtenebrator, which is the device that blocks us from seeing into the city. Again, the lattice precepts is what prevents us from entering the city, but we'll have to deal with that last because it's part of the weapon itself, the Factorum Malleus. And as they're getting all this information, this moral debate basically, again, comes up of like, should we just destroy the city? And again, Aiden and Trist are kind of pushing back against that, saying we can't do that. There's got to be another way. Meanwhile, Emira is like, they don't fear us, they resent us. And if we let them live here, they're just going to do it again. And Arcadia is like, hey, Salaha and the emissary both have powers that are going to help us in this mission. So we need to kind of protect the emissary at all costs, because if you die here, you don't die like forever. Like your eternal god form will still be okay, but you won't be able to get into the city anymore because of these protections. So like, be careful, and again, make sure the emissary is safe. So again, kind of after some debating, they decide the best course of action is to drop the cone of silence and everyone share information, because they're going to need each other's help, and just see what we can find out in the night that we have. So they ultimately decide that if we can deal with the Aerovox protocol and the obtenebrator, then the rest of their godly brethren will be able to help them from outside. Like the Storm Lord could cause a big old ruckus here without even being here. And then we can worry about the weapon, the Factorum Malleus. So a little bit of going back and forth, but they ultimately decide, let's split up, see what we can find out about these different things. The obtenebrator is in the Genesis ward. The Aerovox protocol is obviously all throughout the city. So Aiden says, all right, Milo and I will go find a way into the Genesis ward, and Trist decides to join them. Asha wants to destroy things, and Tashar is on board with that, as is Zahar. So the three of them, and the emissary. So the four of them are on Aerovox protocol destruction. And finally, Salaha says that they'll find out all the information they can about all of this, and Umleta and Emira will accompany him. So after that plan is decided, Aiden casts telepathic bond to connect all of them mentally to be able to communicate, and casts Death Ward on the emissary specifically. Arcadia basically wishes them all luck and says this is our last night as mortals. And that is where the episode ends. Again, episode 99, Downfall Part 1. Thank you guys for bearing with us on that long, dense recap.
Oh, yeah. So much great stuff to unpack.